What is up, guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. Now, what it was like a week ago, we had the developer direct, right? So today we're talking Avowed. Now, the presentation for Avowed looked great, but to be honest, the enemy AI looked a bit janky from what they were showing, right? It looked promising. They said that there will be a deep consequence system, deep dialogue choices, there will be different loadouts, and that all sounds great, all right? All sounds great, but the enemy AI looked janky. So 4 days ago, they had a developer direct deep dive on Avowed where they sat down with the developers and they talked about, gameplay elements, and there was some new footage. And I watched the footage and I thought to myself, why was this not at the developer direct showcase? Why? I don't know how Microsoft handles the PR, but okay. Anyway, let's take a look at this. Let's hear what they have to say, and I'll give my thoughts. And as always, guys, I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate your thoughts. So sound off in the comments below. What are your thoughts on this? Let's get to it.
Context and building off of the Pillars universe, what would you both say makes it an Obsidian game?
For me, it's really about our player-centric approach to roleplay. Our studio's motto is "Your world's your way," and so the way we really approach choice and consequence and everything else is
Your world's your way sort of always been their way, like with the Outer Worlds, New Vegas, things like that, So, with what's it as well? What's the game's name? Grounded. So very interesting.
Just giving players opportunities to define who they are in this world, how they want to behave, like just what fantasy, what challenges they want to undertake. And so with all of the content we design, whether it's quests, companion relationships, or gameplay, which Gabe can talk to.
Companion relationships. Okay, so there's going to be companion relationships that we can build upon. I hope it's better than the companion relationships we got in Starfield, as well as the Outer Worlds. And really that there are better and more unique loyalty missions for those companions. So I hope there's a wider variety of companions that you can actually build relationships with in it. And I just hope it's better loyalty missions, loyalty quests for companions.
We really try to create this player-shaped whole so that we're always leaving room for players to really step in, drive the game and the story forward, and just define who they are in this setting.
Okay.
Yeah, from the gameplay perspective, right? If you look at Grounded, Grounded is your world's your way. You get to build whatever world you want.
Fantastic game.
In the context of Avowed, right? We've tried to lean into that with the gameplay mechanics and sort of let the player, through the loadout system, through what companions you can choose, through the abilities they can choose.
They say through the companions you can choose, and we've seen in the gameplay that there was a companion fighting with the character, so I take it you go in as a team, as with Starfield and in many other RPG games, you can take companions with you. Okay.
They're throwable that they can select, right? Just what is the player
there's another companion with you.
Combatants being able to support that in as many ways as possible.
So first encounter.
Speaking of gameplay mechanics.
Exactly. I have some questions here. Yeah. Okay. So you're armed. I see you immediately pull out a sword and a shield. It looked like there was a parry move that the player uses here. Like,
you see, the enemy AI looks a bit janky, they look a bit stiff, not that smart.
Also charging the shield. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is our dual wielding system. Basically, the player has two loadouts.
Looks a bit stiff, but
put
it's alpha gameplay.
And a weapon in your primary hand, and
but it looks
allow
better
the player
than
to mix and match one-handed weapons.
It looks better than what we got in the developer direct, what we saw there. They don't seem that much stiff here. Still a bit, but maybe they can iron that out. As they're saying, alpha gameplay, and we don't know exactly when in this year it will release. Probably in the next 6 months, 3 months, or whatever. Hopefully they can iron that out and make the AI better, the enemy AI.
Weapons. And so right there what you're seeing is your sword and board, right, going into it and trying to close the gap in the distance and having the ability to parry with your shield and power attack with your sword.
So there was a shielded enemy, and it felt like the sword and board stopped working. But then you also, right there, you pull somebody in a little, get over here. Talk to us about some of the different skills and abilities.
Yeah, so that's one of our ranged units that basically is out in the distance. You're using Into the Fray, which is a mechanic to allow you to pull the enemy closer to you.
Okay, the enemies are okay.
Again, we have
the
power
enemy
attack,
AI
that's
is
a
looking a bit
blocker.
better.
That's essentially not
he
your
switches
basic
the
melee
loadout.
attacks are just not going to go through it. So you're gonna have to use your power attack to be able to break their block.
Or you can swap to the wand if there's a shielded enemy. You're not getting through to them. So how often?
So apparently you can have 2 loadouts, and you can change it as you're playing. You're only allowed to have 2 loadouts. And as you see, the shield and the sword was not working against the enemy AI with the shield, so I had to switch to the one, which is great. And I think having different loadouts, different abilities, skill trees, and that lends to replayability of the game. What makes a great game to me at least is its replayability.
In the game, do you find maybe yourselves through the experience? I'm much more a Magic player. I suspect I will be heading down
Why
like
did they
more
not
of the
show
wanded
this? Come on,
path.
look
But
at this.
clearly, there's
This looks so
diversity
much
with
better.
enemies and diversity in how you need to approach them. So can you talk
Oh,
about
going Harry
like how
Potter.
much you guys maybe in your
Harry
play
Potter is
experiences
dead.
have been swapping between them? Like what can we expect as players?
We definitely try to have these mechanics that are common amongst most weapons, but at the same time, try to give the space across all the different weapon types. So if you're using the wand, there's a lot of homing going on there. There's a lot of it's magic damage. It's going through their it's going through their armor and stuff like that.
Okay, we have like
Yeah, exactly.
we saw
versus,
this one.
Again, using
A wand and a
melee
sword, I'll
weapon
probably
where
play
you're
with
gonna have
that.
to get closer to them. Yeah.
Okay.
So a little bit
different
personal
play
style,
styles.
a little bit
Yeah.
like what are the enemies you're actually dealing with in that moment. Yeah.
One of the great things about this
So essentially, there's a different play style for everybody depending on how you want to play. You want to play from a distance, play from I think every good RPG game has that mechanic.
system that Gabe's team has been building those, it's very flexible, and it supports players mixing and matching between weapons, between ability trees. Respecking is pretty easy for players who really want to try something different. So when I'm playing, I kind of love to follow my sense of curiosity, and sometimes you'll find a new unique weapon with some pretty nice buffs on it, and maybe you'll decide to rock that for a while, even if it's not what you've been using previously.
So there is a skill tree in this game.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I love a good skill tree. So
Yes, everybody
loves that.
One of the things we've done in terms of skills in the tree is we've tried to, pillars as classes, right? We wanted to be able to grab as many abilities from the trees as possible. And sort of categorize them a little bit differently so that the player doesn't feel like they're locked into a single choice at the start of the game.
Okay,
they can kind of mix and match.
Okay, that's good.
Between
That's good.
different abilities.
Yeah, come on, that's good because now you chose a particular skill tree and you find out it doesn't really suit your play style and you're not enjoying it as much. You can switch up to something different. That's good.
So you can get some you have some variety. You can choose to kind of commit to being a fighter.
That's the word they're always throwing is variety, player choice, consequence, decision making, player freedom. And that's what most of the Xbox games have been kind of pushing is player freedom. But we've seen from last year, that's not always the case.
Fighter, right, per se, but it's not an enforced kind of class setup.
And as Carrie said, you can respec if you don't like the direction it went down.
Yeah.
I love that.
But there are definitely some pretty fun and wild combinations, like, you can do your traditional sword and board or, play more of a magic wielder with a grimoire and a wand. But you can also take a pistol and a shield and just charge around the battlefield and fight characters at medium distance. And you can use some of the different abilities that you're seeing in this playthrough to support that flexibility.
But I'm curious because we're seeing a little bit of that now.
Well, you can see in the gameplay, a bit of dips and here and there. So hopefully this game is well optimized on the release.
Where you have different spellcasting effects on each. So I imagine there's probably some really incredible combos. Have you seen some special combos yourselves or maybe what testers have managed to pull off?
Yeah, definitely. So, with Into the Fray, you could use like a fireball ability that creates like an AoE on the ground, right? And then pull the enemy into the fire.
I love it.
They get on fire. But in terms of the wands, right? Like what you're seeing there is a a sort of enchanted wand. And,
look at this! Why we seeing more combat and
elements
things
that you
from
can maybe find, but pillars is really known for their unique weapons and the unique permutations of enchantments.
the AI is moving around more in that. But
So in this
yeah.
particular area, I
directly lifted from there. But there's another very Obsidian element to Avowed, which is branching dialogue and how you make choices within the story too. And Carrie, you alluded to some consequences potentially if you make one decision or another, but it's again very much like playing your own way. So can you talk about
Now
just
you
how
see.
impactful like those choices that you make are and that branching dialogue and how that can result in different paths for the player?
Absolutely. So again, for us, creating these choices, like the big ones that affect the outcome of a quest, or the well-being of certain characters or communities, are just as important as the smaller choices that you make in navigating a dialogue and kind of in subtle ways influencing your relationship with another character. But all of it is really centered around letting the player be the main character in this setting. And so what we're seeing.
Okay, but is it actually going to be that way? That is the question. Is it actually going to be that way where we play like we want and we see the consequences of our actions throughout the game, and not just at a certain point within the game, but we see it throughout the game, that it makes our experience more personal to the player, to you as the player. We've heard this before: play like you want, be what you want in Starfield. But it wasn't actually that way. It was more of, especially like in the factions, it was more of what Bethesda wanted you to play. When you do the Space Cowboy thing, as the way Bethesda wants you to play as a Space Cowboy, or the way Bethesda wants you to play as a Space Pirate, and things like that. So, Obsidian, do not mess this up, man, because you have a lot riding on this. And me personally, I love a good consequence system. And after playing Baldur's Gate 3, man, come on. Games like The Witcher, Cyberpunk, that has good consequence systems. Okay, not Cyberpunk that much, but Obsidian has to hit the nail on the head here. They have to nail it. They have to nail the consequence system, the dialogue system, where they are actually branching consequences that spread out throughout the game, that makes it then more personal to you as the player. If not, man, it's going to be another miss.
Here is, the players, they've been exploring this grotto. They're finding the bodies of these dead soldiers and kind of picking up pieces of a story along the way. And so here they finally found a survivor and talking through them about what happened and getting a little bit more information. So there is a moment that's going to come up after this where the player can confront the guy who ran away, and make a pretty impactful choice with him about how they decide to navigate that conversation. And they can either, it's very obvious that this guy was in over his head, and then they can either sympathize with him and console him a little bit, or challenge him for his cowardice and for the way he abandoned his unit. And the way the player navigates that conversation definitely has big consequences for how that encounter plays out.
So you mentioned your player being the main character, but they're not the solo character. We see in this conversation Giada and Kai, I want to say. Can you tell us about the relationship with companions and how they interact both in the story and in gameplay?
Here we go.
Sure. So, your companions are your traveling partners in your journey through the Living Lands. They all have deep ties to different regions of the Living Lands, and they all have their own personal reasons for wanting to ally with the player and help them resolve the big conflicts that you're encountering over the course of the game. So they're your allies, in some ways your advisors, your local guides, and they provide a lot of additional commentary and context that reveals something both about their character, but also about the corner of the world.
Yes, but are there more characters than these two just? Or the more
you're exploring. And Kai in particular has a pretty deep history with Shatterscarp that comes out a little bit over the course of this quest as he starts to see how...
Why does Giada's character model look so like something from Fortnite? Is it just me? It looks like a Fortnite character. Like, texture quality ain't that great here over here.
The region and the people have changed in his absence, and maybe where he let them down. But obviously, they're also your allies in battle, and that's something that Gabe can speak to.
Yeah. So for the companions, we wanted to make sure that they had their role in the combat systems, and so again, like I talked about.
Please, we don't need another Sarah or what's the other companions' names? Now I can't get to it. Where they are just. Where the companion AI is just so bad, they're basically doing nothing in combat. At least that's another thing. I I hope that they actually help when you're fighting enemies and they're not just standing there and they're hopeless AI companions.
Kai can help you with the burning brambles, and Giada is healing, right? And so Kai's kind of your tank. He has an ability that's called taunt, or it's not called taunt, but it's a taunt, and a taunt allows you to basically make the enemy take aggression from them and start to focus on.
Okay, so they each have unique abilities.
And then Giada can have the ability to heal your party. So yeah, just they have impact in combat.
Can we actually upgrade
their
their abilities?
There will be other companions throughout the game as well?
There's a question.
Yes, you'll meet a couple more. Kai and Giada are just two of them.
Okay.
A couple more, as in what? 1, 2 more? Come on, give at least like 6 or something. You know, like in Mass Effect, where we have variety. Like he said, Kai has a taunting ability. Are we then able to actually upgrade those abilities so that they are better in combat, you know, to help us in combat the same way that Mass Effect did it? So these are things that I'm looking forward to that they actually have in this game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did Outer Worlds also have that where you can upgrade your companion's abilities? I believe so. I'm not too sure. Man, it's been such a long one since I played the game. But now, according to them, this gameplay here is sort of a side quest where they went to explore, and they said that it can be a missable area, all right, if they did not explore, if the player was not exploring. But the key theme with this deep dive is they constantly saying there's deep consequences. It's play as you want. It's your decisions that make out the world and things like that, right? And that exploring is beneficial and things like that. But we've heard this before as well. They're also saying with different skill trees, there's different replayability of the game, which all sounds great. But if you remember last year, what did Pete Hines say about REDFALL? You guys remember that? Let's roll the clip.
How similar or dissimilar would you say this game, REDFALL, is from the other?
I mean, look, on the surface, it's a first-person shooter that you can play solo or with, up to 4 players. And so immediately you might say, well, it's not a single-player game, so it must be wildly different. And don't get me wrong, there's absolutely ways in which it is different. But I think when folks play the game, and even when they see more of the game, I think they'll start to see all of those things about an arcane game that they love and appreciate. Why it's won multiple Action Game of the Year awards for Dishonored 2, is their ability to bring all of those things together, really high level, polished, and let folks experience it. And so I think all of those things we talked about. If you want to play a game by yourself and get a great arcane story, you can absolutely do that in REDFALL. But you can also do things that you haven't been able to do in an arcane game, like experience it with friends and find out sort of how the whole can become greater than the sum of the parts, like playing it off of each character's abilities. You saw some of that in the demo that we showed. I think the more that people appreciate that, you almost are going to want to try and play REDFALL a couple of different ways. You might want to play it by yourself a little bit, play it with others, and it's a game that allows you to do either or both of those things, however you see fit.
I'm glad you talked about playing with friends.
And unfortunately, we all know what happened with REDFALL. So Pete Hines, and I mean, this was 3 months before launch. Am I correct? So 3 months before launch, you should already know in what state the game is. Am I correct or am I wrong? 3 months before the time, you should know what state the game is going to release in. And yeah, either Pete Hines was lying through his teeth here. And that is the thing. That is why I'm on the fence also about Avowed, man. Because the game looks great. It looks like a great RPG. But there's other great RPGs also coming out this year, like Dragon's Dogma 2, which looks amazing. So Avowed is going to be a different sort of experience, but it has to be that old Obsidian experience. And I hope that in this deep dive, these creators, and they are not talking BS, They're not lying through their teeth, the way Pete Hines was doing here about REDFALL. I hope it's actually the way that they are describing the game, that it actually is like that we have branching consequences, that it really is your world and how you play it, that you can build upon relationships with these companions, and and you build meaningful relationships that is personal to you as the player, and that the skill trees and everything like that is actually great, to the point that you feel like you can do another playthrough a different way, you know? So I hope, man, that is actually the case. But time will tell, man. Given all the PR that they did before, especially for REDFALL, like Pete Hines say, as player you want and replayability, all that, which he was clearly lying through his teeth. So they have to have a hook that everything they say should actually be true, that it hooks the Xbox players again, and that it actually connects with the players. Because, man, they've got 4 big games releasing this year, but if you have 4 stinkers for another year in a row, I think you're going to lose a lot more confidence from the loyal consumers and gamers that are still playing on your platform, on your ecosystem. But anyway, man, that's all I have to say. Let me know down in the comments below. What are your thoughts on Avowed? Do you think the game can be polished? Do you think it's going to play out the way that they've explained, the way they talked about, or do you think it's going to be another miss? Anyway, guys, do subscribe to the YouTube channel, man. Try to get to 300 followers, to 300 subscribers, sorry, not followers. But anyway, I gotta love and leave you guys. Stay safe out there. Rampage out. Peace.